What if I told you that the secret to selling more, leading better, and building an unforgettable brand is not about money, it's not about marketing or management. It's about the way you tell a story. Here's the truth. Products don't sell themselves. People, they don't follow facts, and investors don't buy spreadsheets. They buy into stories. And if you, as an entrepreneur, can master storytelling, you'll unlock influence, impact, and income like never before. Think about it. In the Bible, Jesus didn't teach complex theories. He used parables, short stories to tell people so that they can remember it. That's why his words lasted for 2,000 years plus and beyond. In business, Steve Jobs didn't just sell MP3 players with 1 gig of storage. He told the story of 1,000 songs in your pocket. That's why Apple has won hearts. In psychology, we know that stories trigger emotions in the brain that facts simply cannot. Stories stick, numbers fade. If you can tell a story, you can connect with customers, employees, and even yourself at a deeper level. So, why is storytelling the most powerful soft skill for entrepreneurs? Well, let's break it down. The first thing is this: stories sell. Here's the hard truth. People don't buy products. They buy feelings. They buy feelings? What does that mean? Well, that means this. Logic makes people think, but emotions make them act. And nothing activates emotions faster than a story. Think about this. When Apple launched the iPod, they didn't just market it as an iPod with all these specifications and features. They didn't say, here's an iPod with 5 gigabits of data. It's an MP3 player. It's all. They didn't say all that. They said, Steve Jobs told the story of 1,000 songs in your pocket. Instantly, people saw freedom, fun, and possibility. The story sold the vision, not the gadget. In Luke chapter 15, Jesus tells a story of the prodigal son. He could have just said, God forgives, and that's factual. But he told the story. The story was about a son who left, he got out there and he failed, and then he returned back home. But when he returned back home, he was embraced. And so that story, it hits the heart. It moves people to believe and act. That's persuasion through story. You know, studies show that people are 22 times more likely to remember a story than they are a statistic. You could say charity helps millions of children, and that's important, but it's vague. Instead, you can share Maria's story, a little girl in Honduras who got clean water for the first time, and suddenly people will feel connected and they'll feel compelled to give. As an entrepreneur, you must stop selling products and start selling transformations. Here's a quick formula for you. You start with the problem, the struggle, the solution, and then success. Problem, struggle, solution, and success. The problem is, what pain do your customers have? Right? That's the problem. The struggle. What happens if this continues? If the pain continues? The solution. How does your product solve the problem? How is your product a solution to their problem? And then success. What's life like after using your product? For example, don't just say this software has automation features. Instead, say something like, before using this software, business owners spent 10 hours a week drowning in spreadsheets. And then after using it, they've got their weekends back and their revenue doubled. You didn't just sell a tool, you sold time, freedom, and peace of mind. That's why stories sell. They take your product out of the realm of stuff and they place it into the realm of identity, hope, and transformation. All right, the second reason why storytelling is the number one soft skill every entrepreneur must master is the fact that stories lead. You see, facts may inform your team, but stories inspires your team. A leader's job is not just to give instructions. A leader's job is to create vision that people want to run toward. And the fastest way to transfer vision is through story. Now, why do stories make leaders followable, right? I don't know if is followable a word. Well, why do stories make people want to follow leaders? Well, it's because direction feels like, so if you don't use stories, then direction feels like a demand. And so it's like you're saying, do this and meet this deadline and hit these numbers. It feels like a demand. But when you're able to invite them into a story, it's like an invitation. It's like you're saying, let me show you where we're going, why it matters, and how we can win together. And if you do it that way, people are more likely to follow you and do what you ask them to do. And so when people understand the story that they're a part of, they stop working for a paycheck and they start working for purpose. Here's an example. Nehemiah didn't just say, let's rebuild the wall. See, that's a task. That's like giving a task. Instead, he told the story. He says, we are God's people. Our city is in ruins, and this wall will be our protection and our honor. And so when he said that, the people caught the vision and they worked side by side until the wall was complete. And they did it in record time. Another example is like Elon Musk doesn't just tell Tesla employees we're building cars. No, he invites them into a story. The story is we're accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. That story attracts top talented employees and it keeps them motivated to work long hours and tough challenges. Another example is Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. could have just laid out like a speech with, full of bullet points on civil rights. But he didn't do that. Instead, he gave the world, I have a dream. I have a dream is a story, a vision painted in words that are so powerful that even decades later, people are still inspired by that speech. And so let me give you a simple storytelling framework for leadership. When leading, you want to craft your story around these three elements: the past, the struggle, and the future. The past is where we've been. You can say, we started this company in a small garage with nothing but an idea and a mission. The struggle is what we are facing right now. You say we're in a crowded market and every competitor wants our customers. And then the last part, the third part, is the future. The future is where we are going together. You say, but if we can just stay focused, we're not just another business. We're building the future of how people connect. When your team sees themselves as characters in a bigger story, they'll fight harder, they'll stay longer, and they'll give more than they would for just a paycheck. The bottom line is this: stories don't just sell products, they build movements. A leader with data can get compliance, but a leader with a story can get commitment. All right, the third reason why storytelling is the number one soft skill that every entrepreneur must master is the fact that stories build brand. Here's the blunt truth. Your brand is not your logo. Your brand is not your colors. Your brand is not your tagline. Your brand is the story in the minds of your audience. It's the story that they repeat when you're not in the room. If you don't tell that story clearly and consistently, the market will write one for you. And often it won't be the one that you want. And so you want to get ahead of this. You want to be able to tell your own story. And so why do stories matter for branding? Well, they matter because stories they define who you are. Stories attract people. And then stories, they stick. Think of the world's most recognizable brands. They are not built on features. They're built on stories. For example, Nike doesn't just sell shoes. They tell a story about grit, about determination and victory. Just do it. Just do it is about victory. Every ad is not just a product. It's about the person you become when you wear their products. That's why they dominate across sports, cultures, and generations. David wasn't branded as the shepherd boy with a sling. His story became the giant slayer. Studies show people are more loyal to brands that they feel an emotional connection to. And so that connection is not built with slogans. It's built with stories that align with the customer's identity. And so, how do you build a brand story? To create a brand story that sticks, your story needs to have 3 parts: the hero, the guide, and the transformation. The first thing is the hero. Spoiler alert, the hero is not you. No, it's not you. The hero is your customer. Here's an example. In Apple's story, the hero is not the iPhone. It's the creative individual who uses the iPhone to change the world. The second thing is the guide. Now that's you. You are the guide. You're not the star, you're the guide. You're the mentor who helps the hero win. And the third part is the transformation. The transformation is, what does life look like after our experience with you and your product? You see, Nike, they show people from sitting on the couch to becoming an athlete. Airbnb shows people that you can go from feeling like a tourist to feeling like you belong anywhere. When you tell your brand story this way, customers don't just buy your products, they live your story. The bottom line is this: a strong brand is a story that people want to step into. And when your story is clear, customers become characters in that story and they become raving fans for life. All right. The fourth and final reason why storytelling is the number one soft skill that every entrepreneur must master is the fact that stories inspire action. Here's the truth. Facts tell, but stories sell. You see, data can change someone's mind, but only a story can move their hearts. And when the hearts move, the hands follow. And so, why do stories drive action? Well, I believe stories drive action because stories hit the heart. The stories hit the heart. The heart connection creates action. And people don't act when they feel like they know enough. And so it's not about knowledge. People act when they feel enough, when they feel enough emotions. That's what makes them act. So an example is like Charity Water. Charity Water doesn't just say, well, there are 785 million people without clean water. They don't say that because that's just a statistic. Instead, they tell a story about a young girl walking 4 miles every day with a heavy bucket to get water. She's missing school, she's risking her health, and that story compels people to give because the story is not abstract, it's human. It makes you have a connection to it. Research shows that people are 22 times more likely to remember a story than there are some random facts. And more importantly, they're far more likely to act on a story because it creates empathy, not just awareness. And so, how do you inspire action with a story? Well, here's a simple formula that you can use. Number one, you start with the struggle. Show the pain, the problem, the tension that they're dealing with. You can say something like, John was working 70 hours a week and still couldn't make ends meet, right? You talk about the problem, and then you show the shift. You introduce the breakthrough moment. You can say, until John discovered a system, he's working 70 hours a week until he discovered a system that allowed him to double his revenue without adding more hours. That's you showing the shift. And then the last part is you paint the success. You give a vision for what life looks like after. You can say, now John spends more weekends with his kids and his business is more profitable than ever before. And then the last thing you do is after you say that, you tell them about the problem about John was working a lot of hours and not making ends meet. And then John met your solution. And now John spends his weekends with his kids because he found a solution. And then the last part is you can tie it back to the next steps. Then now you can issue an invitation. You can say, well, if John can do it, then so can you. Here's how you start. Now, why does this work? Well, it works because when you wrap your call to action inside of a story, you're not just telling the people what to do. You're not just saying buy now. you're showing them who they can become. And so the bottom line is this: stories don't just change minds, they change behavior. And if you, as an entrepreneur, want customers to buy, if you want the team members to follow you, or if you want the investors to fund your venture, you need more than a pitch deck. You need a story that makes action feel inevitable. So here's the challenge. Before your next sales call, team meeting, or social media post, don't just give information. Tell a story. Share your why. Paint the picture and let people feel the journey. Because when you master storytelling, you won't just grow a business, you build a legacy. If this hit home, drop a comment and let me know. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video with an entrepreneur who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.